A Torrens certificate of title is famously indefeasible. Once a name is printed on this paper, the state guarantees that ownership. But that guarantee has a rigid limit. The Torrens system cannot be weaponized as a shield for fraud. Philippine equity recognizes a strict bifurcation of property ownership. There is the legal title, the name printed on the official registry, and the equitable title, held by the true owner who actually possesses the beneficial interest. To understand how this works in practice, we need to conduct a forensic audit of Title V of the new Civil Code, covering Articles 1440 through 1457. This framework decodes exactly how Philippine law splits property rights, enforces strict fiduciary duties on those holding legal title, and intervenes to prevent unjust enrichment. Resolving a property dispute or passing the bar examination requires the ability to look past the surface-level paperwork to identify the true owner in equity. Article 1440 establishes a triad. The trustor creates the arrangement. The trustee holds legal title. The beneficiary holds equitable title. But if one person becomes both sole trustee and sole beneficiary, the titles merge and the trust is extinguished. A trust requires the trustee to hold specific property in a fiduciary capacity. If the purported trustee is permitted to commingle the trust funds with their own money and use them as they see fit, the fiduciary relationship dissolves into a standard debtor-creditor relationship. Article 1441 classifies trusts based entirely on their creative force. Express trusts are created by the direct, deliberate intention of the parties. Implied trusts are superimposed by operation of law. There is a recognized jurisprudential exception to this binary. An implied trust converts into an express trust if the trustee explicitly acknowledges the true owner's right in a public document. Article 1442 broadens the legal framework by formally adopting the general principles of Anglo-American trust law, allowing courts to draw upon established equity jurisprudence to resolve complex fiduciary disputes. But this adoption has a strict boundary. Foreign equity principles apply only insofar as they do not conflict with Philippine laws. Local statutes like the Civil Code, Code of Commerce, and Rules of Court always maintain absolute supremacy. Analyzing any trust requires first classifying its origin, whether it stems from intent or from operation of law, and then measuring its mechanics strictly against Philippine statutory limits. When dealing with real property, intention alone is not enough. An express trust concerning an immovable cannot be proven by parole or oral evidence. Similar to the statute of frauds, the law demands a written instrument to protect the integrity of real property titles. This is a rule of proof, not validity. If opposing counsel fails to object to oral testimony during a trial, the protection is deemed waived and the express trust can be successfully established. This strict evidentiary barrier only applies to immovables. Express trusts over personal property, like cash or vehicles, can still be proven entirely by parole evidence. While the proof for land must be written, the language itself does not need to be formal. No particular technical words are required. The absence of the word trustee is immaterial, provided the document clearly demonstrates a functional intent to create a fiduciary duty. Once intent is established, equity works to preserve it. A trust will not fail simply because the appointed trustee declines the designation, resigns, or dies. Under Article 1445, the court will automatically appoint a substitute trustee to execute the mandate. For the trust to be perfected, the beneficiary must accept it. If the trust imposes no onerous conditions, acceptance is absolutely presumed by law. But if it carries a financial burden, explicit acceptance is required. Express trusts are easily formed by clear intention, but when real property is involved, enforcing them in court requires rigorous, written documentary proof. When specific intent is absent, but justice requires intervention, the law activates implied trusts. The statutory list of implied trusts is not exclusive. They act as equity's dynamic response to fraud and unjust enrichment. Under Article 1448, if Person A pays the purchase price, but title transfers to Person B, a resulting trust arises. A is the equitable owner.
But if B is A's child, the law flips the presumption to a pure donation. Courts will also refuse to enforce a resulting trust if the arrangement was designed to circumvent the law. If a foreign national pays for Philippine land using a local dummy to hold title, the trust is void under the clean hands doctrine. Article 1449 applies this same logic to donations. If a donor transmits legal estate to a donee solely to hide assets from creditors, with no intent for the donee to hold beneficial interest, an implied trust results back in favor of the donor. Article 1450 prohibits absolute ownership by lenders who take property title under their own name merely to secure the payment of a borrower's debt. In these loan scenarios, the law categorizes the lender as a trustee holding the property for the borrower. The borrower retains the equitable right to pay the debt and compel a reconveyance, functioning effectively as an equitable mortgage.
In every resulting trust, equity ignores the administrative paperwork and relentlessly tracks the true source of the valuable consideration. This operational logic extends to succession. If an heir inherits land but registers the legal title in the name of a stranger for convenience, a resulting trust is established. The true heir remains the equitable owner. This pie chart illustrates joint purchases under Article 1452. If multiple people buy property but register the title under just one name, a trust is created by law for the others in exact proportion to their financial contributions. Under Article 1453, if property is conveyed to a person relying purely on their declared intention to hold it for another, equity intervenes. The grantee is estopped from asserting absolute ownership and betraying the promise. Similarly, under Article 1454, equity will pierce the veil of a deed of absolute sale. If the conveyance was executed solely to guarantee a debt, an implied trust is established for the benefit of the grantor. Articles 1451 through 1454 exist for a single reason: to prevent individuals from weaponizing convenience, administrative arrangements, or temporary agreements to steal absolute ownership. When fiduciary duty is directly breached, the law applies its harshest remedies. Under Article 1455, if a trustee or agent uses trust funds to buy property and registers it in their own name, a constructive implied trust is instantly established. The property equitably belongs to the owner of the funds. Article 1456 covers property acquired through mistake or fraud. This creates a trust decentor. The bad actor is forcefully designated by law as a constructive trustee, holding the property for the true, defrauded owner. Time limits apply to these remedies. An action for reconveyance based on a constructive trust generally prescribes in 10 years. However, if the true owner remains in actual possession of the property, the right to seek reconveyance becomes imprescriptible. A Torrens certificate merely confirms title, it does not create it. The Torrens system was never designed to shield fraud, and Article 1456 provides the precise legal mechanism to strip bad actors of ill-gotten gains. Because implied trusts are born from concealed actions or fraud, proving them requires an evidentiary backdoor. Under Article 1457, implied trusts over immovables can bypass the statute of frauds entirely and be proven by parole evidence. But oral testimony against a registered title carries a heavy burden. To defeat a public document like a Torrens certificate, the oral evidence must be clear, trustworthy, and convincing. Constructive trusts act as equity's ultimate aggressive weapon, allowing victims to bypass standard documentary requirements to reclaim what is rightfully theirs. The Torrens system and the law on trusts do not contradict each other. They operate on different layers. The Torrens system maps the legal surface of property, while the law of trusts maps the equitable depths underneath. Express trusts prioritize manifest intent, but demand strict written proof to protect real property. Implied trusts automatically combat fraud and allow oral proof, but leave the claimant vulnerable to prescriptive time limits. To master this area of civil law, you must master this bifurcation. Trace the flow of funds, scrutinize the intent, and always look past the name printed on the paper to find the true owner in equity.